The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Nolan Business Solutions Advanced VAT for Dynamics GP webinar this afternoon. Thanks very much for spending the time to attend this, and I hope that you'll find it useful as we go through the Advanced VAT module. The Advanced VAT module has been around for a number of years in different versions of Great Plains and Dynamics GP, and today I'll be showing the Dynamics 2013 version. So on your screens at the moment you'll see my system set up for Dynamics GP 2013. As we go through, I might point out a few of the changes to the windows within 2013, just to give you a little bit of a flavour of things that have changed in Dynamics GP as well as within our product. So we'll spend the next half an hour or so, and I'll start off by explaining why we wrote Advanced VAT and the functions that it fulfills. We'll have a look at the setup, how we set up the module. We'll then go and have a look at a couple of transactions, both in payables entry and in purchase order processing. We'll look at how you process partial recoverable VAT where you don't know the percentage until the end of the quarter, and finally we'll take a look at some of the reports. So why we wrote the Advanced VAT module is that standard Dynamics GP processes VAT based on the supplier that you're purchasing from and all the items that you're purchasing. Where with the not-for-profit sector, with the professional services sector, the VAT is actually calculated based on departments, cost codes, projects, as to whether it's recoverable, non-recoverable, and percentages. That's calculated either by the HMRC, they give you a percentage, or maybe at the end of the quarter when you're able to have a look at the revenue versus the purchases. So we needed to be able to associate the VAT that was being processed on any transaction based on the nominal ledger account code that was being entered against that transaction. So if I go across to the financial series within Dynamics GP and we take a look at the cards, we start off looking at some accounts, and if I select my hardware account here in Department 100, we can see some new fields on this window. Noticeably the tax option as to whether when we post to this account, whether it's taxable posting or not, and the tax detail that we need to use. So I've created 4 tax details inside the system which will illustrate the different VAT treatments that we process within the Advanced VAT module. So my naming convention is just the naming convention that I've made up for this demonstration this afternoon. It's purchasing, Advanced VAT, fully recoverable, and based on the 20% VAT rate. And it's going to have a look at how we've set that up. If I drill down into the tax detail ID, you can see it's the standard Microsoft Dynamics tax detail maintenance window, where I put in the tax detail ID, a description, my VAT control account, the 2351 account, and the percentage of 20%, which is the UK standard VAT rate. There's a new button on this window which is the options button, and if I press that, it opens up the Nolan's Advanced VAT tax detail options window, where we're able to select how we manage this tax. So I've set this one to be fully recoverable. You'll see that there's 4 options: fully recoverable, partial recoverable, with a fixed percentage, so where we know the percentage and we can go and process that directly. The variable percentage, where we don't know the percentage of the VAT that we can reclaim until the end of the quarter. And so there's rules around how we process those. And finally, non-recoverable VAT. So as this is fully recoverable, we'll leave it as that. We've got a number of global options that relate to the tax detail when it's no matter what VAT treatment is selected. So there's an option to enter the amounts either net or gross. If you're entering the value gross, it will go back and based on the VAT treatment that you've selected, we'll go back and calculate the net and the recoverable VAT. We've also got 2 options within the account options window here. Whether we process non-recoverable VAT and whether we process that to an expense offset. So if I just take a few moments to explain those. The system will, when you're posting your transaction to an expense account, for example, if we have £100 worth of expense and £20 worth of VAT charged by the supplier, by selecting the non-recoverable VAT option here, the system will post all £120 to the expense account at the time of posting. When you process that VAT at the end of the quarter and you know the recoverable percentage, it will then come back and reverse out of the expense account into the recoverable VAT account the amount of the recoverable VAT. So if that is not on, what the system will do is it will process the £100 off the expense account and it will post the non-recoverable portion, or the VAT portion, into what is known as a pot account, and it's at the end of the quarter that it then allocates what's in that pot to either recoverable VAT or back to the original expense account. The expense offset account allows us to not post back to the original expense account, but post to an expense offset account. So if you wanted to see your net purchases against the expense code where you entered it, and you didn't want to put the non-recoverable portion of the VAT back to that expense, you could post off to an expense offset and then reallocate that non-recoverable portion of the VAT as you needed later on in the process. So those are those options there. Some tax details, most tax details we want to show on the VAT 100, some we didn't want to show, so there's an option there for you to select the 2. We also allow you to input a memo account into the system, and what the memo account is inside Dynamics GP is a non-financial account. So it's an account that just holds values. You can post one-sided journals to it, normally used for things like headcount or office space, and in this case it's used just to record the amount of VAT that is not being recovered. Like I say, it's not financial, so it's purely for statistical purposes. The next field down is the reverse charge tax detail ID. So should this tax detail be subject to reverse charge processing, that's the sales tax detail ID that will reverse that VAT out on. And finally, there's a checkbox here, a change reason required. The system will default this tax detail ID whenever you post to the expense account. If you do want to change it, the system will ask you for a change reason as to why you're making that change. As we go through and I show you the tax details for fixed and variable percentages, we'll talk about these fields down here. So let's close down fully recoverable, and I'm going to move across on the accounts to my 100-6140 account, which I've set up to be partially recoverable fixed. 20% is what the supplier is going to charge us, and 5% is going to be recoverable of that. So we'll have a look at the tax detail ID and have a look at the options that I've set. So because I've set partial recoverable at a fixed percentage, it's allowing us now to enter in a partial VAT recovery rate. So what that's telling us is, of the 20% that the supplier is charging us on any particular purchase invoice, we will only be able to recover 5% of that. The remaining 95% will be posted back either to the original expense account, because we've got the account options as none, or it will be posted back to the expense offset, and I've chosen that option. Okay. Now typically your accounts wouldn't be, as I'm showing here, with separate nominal accounts with different tax details. Typically, I guess you'd do it based on a project code or a departmental code on the system. However, it's easier for illustration purposes to show you this in this way today. So the 6150 is advanced VAT, partial recoverable at a variable rate. Supplier charges 20%, and we don't know how much we're going to be able to recover at the time of posting. If I go down, drill into the tax detail ID, I'm going to have a look at the options. You'll see here I put it as partial recoverable at a variable percentage. We do need to know where to post the recoverable VAT when we're able to recover it, and therefore I put a destination tax ID here as my fully recoverable 20%. And we'll see it being posted off there. And finally, my 100-6160 account is advanced VAT non-recoverable, and under the options of that tax detail I've just set it to VAT treatment as non-recoverable. So that's the setup. You set up your tax detail IDs relating to the tax percentages that you require on the tax treatments, and you allocate those against general ledger accounts. So let's move across to purchasing, and we'll just maximize the transactions palette here, which actually minimizes the palettes down there. I call them palettes. Those people that remember GP before, I think it was about version 8, will remember palettes, and Microsoft was telling us yesterday these are sort of super palettes back again for 2013. So let's go put on a transaction, and when I've opened up my payables transaction entry window, and you'll see that for advanced VAT we've changed the window slightly. We've removed the distribution button, which is normally down here on the right hand side, and we've shown the distributions in a little scrolling window down here. This means that you can enter distributions against your purchase invoice as you go along. So I'm going to put on an invoice relating to the purchase of a printer. I'm going to save it in a batch. It's 20th of February. I'll save it to a batch called 2002CS. My system date set to 2017 because of the demo data, but don't need to worry about that. The supplier, will use Advanced Office Systems as my supplier. Just tab through, and we'll say this is the Advanced Invoice 0001. Okay. So you'll see that the purchase, trade discount, freight, miscellaneous tax, and total fields here are grayed out. We can't enter into here. Those get calculated as you put the distributions on. So we'll start off with 100 6130.00, and the system defaults through for us that it's a fully recoverable type account. This is my Brother printer that I'm purchasing, and for ease of calculation I'm going to say it cost me £100. System calculates that the VAT is £20, so that's come up, and you'll see in my purchases it's showing me a net of £100, recoverable VAT of 20, and a total so far on the invoice of 120. I need some software that goes with this, so I'll type in my 100-6140 account, which is my software purchase nominal ledger account, and I'll put this as configuration software, and you'll see that it's automatically brought up that it's partially recoverable at a fixed %. So if I again put in a value of £100, it puts £20 as the tax amount, which should have been charged by the supplier. But what we can see here now is it's actually posted £19 of that 20 across into my expenses, into my net, and only put £1, which is the 5% of the VAT, into my recoverable VAT. So at this point, because it's a fixed percentage, it splits the VAT into recoverable at 5% and non-recoverable 95%. The third part of this invoice is some supplies, so I'll need some paper for my printer. So I'll enter my supplies account and I'll put print served paper in here. And this is partial recoverable and variable percentage. I don't know yet how much I'm going to be able to recover. So bought by a whole lot of paper, it's £100. The tax amount when I tab off here will become 20, and what the system will do is it will assume immediately that it's all recoverable, but it will put it into a recoverable pot account, which is a separate account to keep those separate. So what we'll see as we go across there is that it adds the 100 to the net, it adds the 20 to the non-recoverable VAT, sorry, the recoverable VAT amount. And finally, I probably need a manual to help me work this printer. So we'll go into my dues and subscriptions and I'll subscribe to printers monthly, which is non-recoverable. So as I put £100 in here, what we'll see is that the whole 120 will go through to my expense, my net, and leave the non-recoverable VAT, sorry, the recoverable VAT at 41. Okay, so I've got £439 sitting as my net. Easy way to show you that is by taking a look at the edit list. So we'll save that transaction, print out the edit list. I'll just expand that a bit so you can see it. And you can see these are the distributions. So the printer itself, which is fully recoverable, I get £100 into my net, and £20 goes into my control account. The supplies, sorry, the software, which was partially recoverable at a fixed percentage, £100 goes into the net, plus the £19 of the irrecoverable VAT, and the £1 goes off into my VAT control account. The partial recoverable at a variable percentage, £100 goes into the net, and the £20 goes into my unrecoverable VAT control account, which is a separate general ledger account, so also known as the pot account. And finally, the non-recoverable VAT, dues and subscriptions, goes in a whole 120 to the net account. At the bottom here as well, we we print out the tax details that we've used. So you can see the 4 tax details, and we've put on the report the recovery percentage and the recoverable tax amount sitting down there, which ties back to the distributions. Okay. So we go down into my batch here, and I'll post this transaction into the general ledger. The posting journal report looks exactly like that edit list. So all those values that we've just been through on the edit list are on the transaction posting report as well. Okay, so the final piece of this jigsaw is at the end of the quarter, when we know the percentage we're going to recover. We have a routine within our financials section, which is the partial VAT allocation window, which allows me to put in the partial recoverable variable percentage tax detail. I'm going to create a end of quarter VAT batch. Sorry. Close too many windows. There it is. And of course a VAT. And what we'll say on this one is we're able to recover 30% of the VAT that was charged on that printed paper. So I press the recovery button, the recover button, which proceed yes, and it shows you the process is incomplete. The processing is complete. I can go to the batch. I see I've got a batch of 40. Let's go and have a look at that transaction. What that transaction is doing is, you can see it's linked to the original purchase ledger voucher, and we're taking £14 out of our irrecoverable VAT control account and posting that back to the original expense account it came from. We're taking £6 out of the irrecoverable VAT control account and posting that to the recoverable VAT control account. So that's that journal there, which runs at the end of the quarter and will run through all your transactions for that quarter, enables us to do that apportionment for you automatically, saving a lot of time. So what I'll do is I'll post that batch and push that through the system. Okay, so how does this work in purchase order processing? If we go back to purchasing and look at the purchase order processing window, again, what we've done here is we've added a third line into the detail. Scrolling window here, which will give us the account we're posting to, tax detail ID, and the amount. So we'll go put a purchase order onto the system, and we'll use the same example. We'll use Advanced Office Systems, and we'll say the item is a printer, one of them at £100. And now the account could have been defaulted from the item if I wanted it to. Say we had to type this in, would it come up automatically? See, it's variable percentage, sorry, fixed recoverable, fully recoverable, it goes in there. Let's do the printer software. and this one was 106,140. You can see here that it's posted the £19 of the irrecoverable VAT up to the net, and the £1 through to the tax detail. The paper. Partial recoverable variable. And finally, the manual. Okay. So purchase order stage. Now we have the VAT. As we've calculated that, obviously on a purchase order, when you send in this purchase order off to advanced office systems, you'll want to show the net not based on your VAT recovery processing. So we allow you to print off the purchase order subtotal of 100 on the purchase order, and the VAT applied to that being the £80 worth of VAT. So that's options within the purchase order. Advanced VAT also works within eRequest. So if you're using the eRequest product, which is set up for advanced VAT, then it will also calculate these values in the same way. So we have the purchase order on the system, and we'll go across, and you can either do a receipt and then an invoice match, or a shipment invoice, which is what I'll do, is a shipment invoice here at the moment. So I'll say we received all those goods. We've got the invoice in from the supplier. It's for those 4 lines. See those. And that comes across onto the invoice. I've got to give an invoice number. So this is advanced invoice 0002. And I'll put it into a 220 CS batch. Okay, just some of the things to talk about before I post this. You'll see on this window and on the purchase ledger there's an analysis button. This analysis button opens up the distribution entry window. You can't change these values because they've been calculated by advanced VAT. However, it does allow you to post things like MDA codes, AA codes, and also if you've got revenue expense deferral module enabled, you're able to go through and do deferrals, prepayments and deferrals on these values as well. So wherever Dynamics GP requires this window to link out to additional modules, that's why we put this window on the system for you. One of the new features in GP 2013 is the attachment management. So not only do you have your notes on your transactions here, but also on a number of windows you have a button, a little paperclip that enables you to attach documents relating to these invoices or sales orders or quotes, and you're able to attach documents in there, which is much better than the OLE area that they used to use against the transaction notes. Right, so that's my shipment invoice on the system. Let me go and post that, and then we'll go and do that recovery again. So we'll go into the batch ID and post that batch. You can see the same detail on the POP receiving posting journal as you saw on the PM transaction posting journal. This doesn't actually post through my general ledger, so I have the option to go and do my separate posting to the general ledger. So we're seeing transaction entry. Okay, so there you can see how it posts off to the general ledger. Okay, so just finally, we'll go through and do the allocation of that VAT at the end of the quarter, and then I'll go and show you some reports. So we'll go into the partial VAT allocation window again. We'll select the variable VAT. I'll put it to another end of quarter VAT batch. And I've got to put a percentage in, so I'll say again we're going to recover 30% of that. Drill down into the batch, and there's our £40 transaction again. As we've used that same amount, so I can post that batch. Okay, you can see in the batch. I'll move it across here slightly. It's posted the £14 out of the VAT control into my expense account, £6 out of VAT control into my recoverable VAT control. So just finally on the reports, if we're going to have a look at the VAT control reporting report, we've got a VAT reconciliation report. This report can be run at any point in the process, and I know a number of users actually run this on a regular basis to see where they are with their VAT at any point. I've just created an option here, Q1 VAT, where I want to show all my VATs, my partial VAT types. So when I print this report, we can see here by the type of VAT, so my fully recoverable, I can see the amounts I've spent, tax amounts, the amount recovered. For the non-recoverable, again, the value of recovered and the percentage. For my partial recoverable at a fixed percentage, see those transactions going through. And finally, at a variable percentage, the transactions going through here. Okay. The top transaction there you'll see is 0, and that's because when I put that transaction through, I actually put through a 0. I would not be recovering any VAT on that transaction. So that's why that's come out to 0. System did warn me. It told me that that might be a mistake, but I said no, that's fine. That's what I wanted. Okay, so that's the VAT reconciliation report, which you can put alongside the standard VAT reports that come out of the VAT 100 and the VAT daybook reports, which actually provide you the backing and the information for your actual VAT return when you need to send it. Okay. Some of the questions I normally get asked is what happens if I'm importing transactions using something like Integration Manager, or maybe they're coming in from another third-party system. We do provide tools within the Advanced VAT module which enables you to recalculate the VAT. So as you bring the transaction in, it'll come in as a standard GP purchase ledger or purchase order processing invoice, and you run the integration assistant process over those, and that process will go and have a look at the account that's been used, go pick up the VAT code set up against the account, therefore it'll know the VAT treatment and will recalculate that invoice based on that process. So you can still use advanced VAT with other systems as well. Okay, so I've got a number of questions which I'll just talk about. Question, will the functionality of linking a nominal and an order to a tax code ever be part of the core grade claims? I can't really comment on that. It's certainly not, as far as I know, on their roadmap. However, one of the things that came up yesterday whilst we were talking to Microsoft about 2013 was that within the MS Connect area of the Microsoft system, you can enter in items that you would like to be considered for inclusion in further releases. So either if you don't have access to MS Connect, please let us know. We can help you with that in putting those kind of suggestions up there. Another question, can the non-recoverable VAT go to a specific expense head against the project cost centre rather than the general pot? Okay, so if it's against the general pot, we're talking here about recoverable variable at a variable percentage, and that the pot account is actually defined on the tax detail ID. So it's just the one account there. But again, this question's come from Mike Harvey, and it'd be interesting, Mike, perhaps we can have a chat offline about this, about maybe a change we can make that relates it to a particular project or cost centre, if we know what it is. Will the tax on the invoice match the tax on the purchase ledger for the transaction? We keep the consistency across the Dynamics GP system in all cases. So it's the only way we could make it so those transactions posted natively without having to get inside the posting routines inside Dynamics. So the answer is yes. The tax that we calculate is the actual tax that you'll see on the transactions inside the purchase ledger. How do you know what the percentage VAT is for the partially recoverable VAT at the point when you run it? That's something that you might have agreed with the HMRC. It might be that the HMRC have given you a VAT percentage to use against a particular cost centre or a particular project. So you can put that in as the fixed recovery rate. Last question I've got is what happens on the sales ledger? There's no processing within the sales ledger, I'm afraid. It's purely on the it's purely on the purchase ledger and on the general ledger that we calculate the advanced VAT. What I do see a number of customers doing is that they produce that VAT reconciliation report, which tells them the VAT percentages, the total net and total VAT that's been put through the sales ledger, which helps them calculate their recoverable percentage on the purchase ledger. But yeah, there's no processing within sales, I'm afraid. And just one more question. Certainly it would be good to discuss the non-recoverable VAT, so thanks, Mike. So we'll have a chat about that perhaps online. And on our website we do have a blog, so things that come out of this and questions that I'll answer across the way, we'll post up on the blog so that other people are able to read them as well. So thanks very much for your time today. Sorry we've gone a little bit over, but I hope you found it informative. And should you need any other information on it or want me to do specific scenarios with you, please don't hesitate to ask your account manager, who will be able to get in contact with me. So thanks again for your time. Bye-bye.